What is going on, everyone? How are you doing? I hope you're doing good, because it is good to feel good, and it is officially the end of 2023, and depending on the timing of when I upload this, it's either the last video that I upload in 2023 or it could potentially be the first video that I upload in 2024. Besides the point, hope you all have a happy new year, and hope 2024 brings a lot of good stuff forward for yourselves. I don't know what I'm trying to say there. Just hope 2024 is a good one for all of you. And what I wanted to do with this video is, much like I do every year, is just look back on my year and like have a little reflection as to what's gone down. But one thing I do just want to quickly acknowledge is something. I don't usually talk about my personal life on my YouTube channel, but there was something that did happen earlier this year. Now, you guys may know a few years ago I got together with someone called Chloe. We went our separate ways earlier this year. I was trying to how do I word that? But yeah, there had been something off in our relationship for some time. Just things weren't really clicking. So we went our separate ways, but the reassuring thing is, you know, there was no hard feelings between the two of us. The feeling was very much mutual. And in turn, we are still very good friends, we're still in contact with each other, and we still meet up from time to time. So there's that consistency, but just things just didn't work out, unfortunately. But to start off this year, obviously you start off how you always do, and that is with January. Now, January for me was a very interesting start to the year because I got back into fitness. Started regularly going to the gym again. And whilst it's kind of been an on and off thing throughout the year, like where I've, you know, gone for like real focus of my fitness, and then, you know, sometimes where I'm not even focused on it at all, I will make it my mission to kind of like regain that focus like going into next year. So whilst I've kind of set the groundwork for myself this year, I want to, you know, kind of push myself, you know, going into the next year with that. So fingers crossed. Also in January, me and Chloe went to go see Jimbo, who is a drag queen, and for those of you who don't know, Jimbo was on RuPaul's Drag Race in Canada, and also in turn they were also on RuPaul's Drag Race UK versus the World a few years ago, and it was a really fun show. It like complete madness, let's just say that, and the ending segment was absolutely incredible. In fact, when me and Chloe met Jimbo just before the show, they were saying like, are you allergic to bologna? I didn't obviously know what they were talking about, but then of course this happens, and it's just, I could not stop crying with laughter at that. It was absolutely incredible. Just seeing just people all around us just getting pelted in the face with pieces of sliced ham. It's great stuff. Also in January, I went to Leeds for one weekend, where I went to go watch the Royal Rumble at an event held by Hooked on Wrestling. It was like, they always do really fun watch-along events. And also, I won the quiz that night. So it was a Royal Rumble themed quiz, and I won the quiz, and my prize was for attending another Hooked on Wrestling event down the line, which I'll come on to momentarily. And my personal highlight of the Royal Rumble for me was the ending, actually. So Roman had just retained his uwu against Kevin Owens, and I don't know why I just called it that. He defended his undisputed WWE Universal Championship against Kevin Owens, and then Sami Zayn is obviously out there because Roman's like keeping an eye on him, you know, make sure doesn't do any shenanigans. And then he's like, you know, Kevin Owens is tied up. Roman Reigns gives him a steel chair, and it's like, is he, will he, won't he? And then he does, and I'm just going to show my reaction again from that because it was incredible. Then moving on to February, I did quite a few things this month. So as part of my job, I then formally transitioned to working from home after spending like nearly 2 months overall doing training on site for my job, and that's where I've been ever since. Like, I mean, sure, I've been into the office every now and then, but I think we were told internally next year that, you know, may be a good chance that I might go into the office more often, but you never know. I like the kind of hybrid, you know, work from home permanently and, you know, going to the office every now and then, so that's good stuff. Also in February, I got into trouble with my local MP. I say got into trouble. Got into a little fight on Twitter with my local MP, Simon Clark. Of course, I gave all sorts of fingers because that's what you do. And obviously, you can look at it either way. You either, you know, support the thing that I did, or you didn't. But ultimately, I just love the reaction, and especially one of the comments being called a finger terrorist. I'm sure, looking back on that now, I'm pretty sure that was like a massive troll, that comment, but you never know. And also, now that I think about it, a general election is supposed to take place next year, or at least Rishi Sunak has said that it will take place next year, so fingers crossed, fingers crossed. There was one thing that me and Chloe did in February where we went to Newcastle. We spent a nice day there, did all sorts of bits and bobs, bits of shopping, and then also one of the highlights of that was we also went to a cat cafe called Mock on the Tyne, and it was just so nice and chill it was, just, you know, to go in there, nice and relaxed, get to interact with all the cats that are in there, and it was so chill, lovely, all good stuff. For March, it was kind of, you know, a kind of a difficult month in places. The main thing being that my gran had passed away, as I mentioned earlier this year. She was 90, you know, my dad's mum basically, and one thing that did kind of hit home was the fact that, you know, when she passed away, that meant that all my living grandparents had also all passed away at that point. So that was kind of sad to kind of, like, you know, put into perspective. But then in turn, whilst it was all sad, you know, to lose another relative of mine, it was also nice that we got to give her a satisfying send-off a few weeks later at the funeral. You know, we all went down to Devon, and, you know, might have been one of the last few times I actually go down there myself. It was lovely, and, you know, very nice to get that last little bit. And one of the things that kind of I also really enjoyed about being down there after the funeral was, you know, I got to see, you know, a house that I'd had like so many memories from growing up as a child, and even the few occasions that I've been there in my adult life. But all in all, it was sad to, you know, say goodbye to one of my grandparents, but the send-off was more than satisfying. And then on a lighter note for March as well, I got to meet up with Becca and Ethan, and again, as well as Becca's boyfriend, Toby. I forgot what his name was for a second, but we had a fun, like, you know, weekend in Sheffield where one night we did a whole like load of games and whatnot. That was very fun, and I love the interactions that I have with them, and, you know, even though we might have not done as many this year, I do look forward to, you know, potentially next year, fingers crossed, we get to do some more interactions. Then in April, I went to Manchester for one weekend where I went to go watch WrestleMania, so another one of Hooked on Wrestling's watch-along parties. And it was another really good night, and I think my highlights of this year's WrestleMania included the likes of Seth Rollins versus Logan Paul, where KSI shows up disguised as a bottle of Prime, Dominic Mysterio finally getting his comeuppance courtesy of his dad Ray. That was a very fun match. Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair probably having the best women's matches in WrestleMania history. Night 1 capping off with the Usos versus Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. That was an incredible match. Then on night 2 you had the likes of Gunther defending his Intercontinental Championship against Drew McIntyre and Sheamus. That was probably my favourite match of the entire weekend. Just like, and also at that point I was like, I'm definitely sure Gunther's going to eventually break the longest reign as Intercontinental Champion. And then Shane McMahon showed up, and it's like the one thing you didn't want to see, and, like, you know, he's about to go and give it his all and then he blows out his knee, which was very unfortunate. But I will give kudos to the referee in that match, as well as Snoop Dogg just improvising, and, you know, Snoop Dogg basically substituting himself in, and that was an incredible moment, that was. And then the main event on night 2, which saw Cody Rhodes taking on Roman Reigns again for the Uwu. We all thought Cody was going to win the Uwu, but that didn't happen. And I don't know when he'll finish the story, but I'm sure that might play into parts of WrestleMania next year. I really don't know at this point. And I will talk about WrestleMania next year in just a moment as well, so spoilers. But yeah, it was all around, it was a great show, and I'm really liking that, you know, since 2020 when they moved to a 2-night format, it just feels very much more spaced out and it's a lot more enjoyable, so good on WWE for doing that. Then with May, I got to see Becca before her birthday, and that was a very shenanigan-filled day, which I've noticed whenever I've been out with Becca and her friends, like for her birthday in the last few years, there have been a few shenanigans. So I'm not going to really go into depth for them, but it was just filled with shenanigans. But then in turn we had a nice quiet evening in watching Eurovision, which took place in Liverpool this year, and it was actually a really fun event, so to say. And then also in May I did a nice bit of travelling, so I went to Portugal for the first time, and as I've mentioned on this channel, one of my goals each year is to go to at least one new country each year, and it was a really nice first time experience. I got to see all sorts in Lisbon, then at the Quinta de Regulaura, and then the Penta Palace, as well as doing all sorts like riding Tram 28 in Lisbon, as well as taking a nice catamaran tour at sunset. It was all really good stuff, that trip. Then also at the end of May I met up with Ethan again. We did a nice little bit of games in Leeds, and oh, it was lovely, it was. I tell you what, this is one thing, like when I get to meet, you know, up with my close friends, you know, we might all live in different parts of the country, but just all in all, it's just nice to get, you know, some time with them, as well as, you know, just some nice ways to catch up and whatnot, a little bit of continuity here and there. It's always good. For June, I went with my mum down to Cardiff. We went to go see Coldplay again, and that was very exciting. So I think just based off the hype of us seeing them the previous year at Wembley Stadium, it was like, do we want to go see them again? And when they announced the, you know, the dates they were doing in the UK for 2023, it was like, let's try Manchester. Okay, no tickets have sold out. But then we settled on Cardiff, and honestly, getting to explore Cardiff for the first time was really fun. In turn, Coldplay in Cardiff was really a great shout as well, pulling out all the stops and, you know, all the hits, and even bringing on Kelly Jones at one point to perform Dakota. That was really fun as well. And at the end of June, beginning of July, I went to go down to London. I went to go watch WWE at the O2 Arena. I went to SmackDown on the Friday night, and then on the Saturday night I went to go watch Money in the Bank, which was absolutely incredible. This was my first like wrestling event that I had attended of any kind, like, you know, live wrestling that is, since January of 2020 when I went to Japan to watch Wrestle Kingdom. And to think all those years going by where I've not seen any live wrestling, and it's like, oh, ready to do this again, I'm buzzing. And both nights were absolutely incredible. It was just some great matches all around on the night itself, especially the two Money in the Bank ladder matches for the men and the women. John Cena showed up, and I'm just gonna show my reaction again to that because that was bloody incredible. I was not expecting that, and I know obviously John Cena these days makes more or less semi-regular appearances every now and then. I understand he's going to retire at some point, but you know, for the years that we've still got him, it's still really nice to see him, and bloody hell, and even just, you know, banging on about, like, you know, trying to get WrestleMania to come to London. I understand, like, in hindsight after that, it was kind of like, you know, just there to like hype up the crowd, but even still, you know, the potential that WrestleMania could happen in London one day, or anywhere in the UK as a whole, I'm up for it, and I would love to go to it. And also, one of my favourite bits about the event is just like the energy of the UK crowds and like our chants. I know they're very much like football chants, but we don't hold back, and especially during the main event between the Bloodline and the Usos, just like we were completely just destroying Roman Reigns. And in fact, I'll just show a clip here.
Stand up if you hate Roman, stand up if you hate Roman, stand up if you hate Roman, stand up if you hate Roman.
For August, I also went to go see some more wrestling. Now, this time around, I went to go watch AEW All In at Wembley Stadium, and just saying that, like, 5 years ago, like, you know, before the first All In took place, and it was like, who would have thought that, you know, one day the guys who made All In a success would go on to, you know, create AEW, and in turn, down the line, you know, have their biggest show to date take place at Wembley Stadium. And it was such a great show, from top to bottom. I know there are some bits hit and miss, but all in all, I had some really great times. I'm trying to think what happened on that night now, it was so long ago. CM Punk had his final AEW match against Samoa Joe, and of course we all know what happened. Also on the show, FTR taking on the Young Bucks for the tag titles, and again, going back to what I was just talking about, we do not hold back when it comes to like our creative chants, and especially given the controversy that surrounded Cash Wheeler, there was the chant of "Wheeler's got a gun, Wheeler's got a gun," and then followed up by "Please don't shoot me," and it's just, we're absolute savages, we are. We do not hold back. We saw Soraya win the Women's World Championship, and I thought it was quite heartwarming that, you know, she got to do it in front of a big crowd at Wembley Stadium. You know, not her home crowd. Well, yeah, it is her home crowd. I was going to say hometown crowd, but she's not from London. She's from Norwich. But all in all, it was nice to see her get a big victory like that. I know it didn't, you know, go anywhere in the grand scheme of things, but just for that moment, it was nice for a Brit to get a good feel-good victory, and especially, you know, 5 years after she was forced to retire initially, and then coming back and, you know, she's still wrestling, so good on Soraya. Also on the show, I was really excited to see Will Ospreay wrestle against Chris Jericho. For me, I had seen Will Ospreay perform countless times throughout the years. In fact, the first time I had seen him perform was, well, at the venue that used to be the O2 Academy in Newcastle, when WCPW, or Defiant, or whatever you want to call it, was a thing. And that was in front of a few hundred people in that venue, and then since then I've gone to see him at all sorts of venues. I've seen him in front of a few hundred people at the Electric Ballroom in Camden for Progress. I've seen him at Madison Square Garden in front of tens of thousands for the Ring of Honor New Japan Supercard a few years back. I've seen him wrestle at the Tokyo Dome at Wrestle Kingdom for New Japan, and then seeing him perform for AEW in front of, like, you know, a big massive crowd, nearly 80,000 or thereabouts, depending on who you want to believe. And yeah, it was just great to see him, and like him, I know obviously he's signed for AEW now, and he's gonna hopefully, you know, factor into great things for the company going into the next year, so fingers crossed for the lad. Also, I really enjoyed on the show MJF versus Adam Cole, and, you know, the power of friendship prevailing. I thought there was going to be, you know, real tensions between the two, but they powered on through, and thanks to that power of friendship. And then September and October, I will admit, were quite quiet for me. I didn't really get up to much, like, you know, for myself, but the one thing I did do at the end of September was I finally got to see my Nana's grave. So on the 2-year anniversary of my Nana's passing, I got to see her grave, where her ashes are buried. So the year prior, we would actually done the thing where we would actually bury them. It was a case where, you know, the little plaque was there, or the little header was there for her, as well as a memorial to both my late granddad George as well as my great auntie Anne. It was nice on that day to just, you know, think back and reflect, and just nice that we finally got to see that, or at least I finally got to see that. And for October, I will admit, again, another quiet month, but one thing I really enjoyed about October was I did the little thing where I treated myself, and I treated myself nicely and got a PS5. Now, I was really contemplating potentially getting a PS5 probably somewhere in the new year, but then I thought to myself, I need a treat for myself, and I got a PS5, and in turn I also got Spider-Man 2, which I played through. It was absolutely incredible, emotional in places, but you know what, a real step above, you know, the first Spider-Man game that came out 5 years prior, so good on Insomniac. And now that I mention me playing games, it goes back to that age-old thing. If I love playing games so much, why don't I just stream myself playing? And I might look into that into the next year, so you never know. Then the following month came November, and I will be honest, it's probably my biggest month to date that all sorts that I got up to. So, of course, in November it was my birthday. I turned 27, so nearing that edge towards 30, but we're not quite there yet. I celebrated in style the night before my birthday. I went out on a work do with my colleagues, and it was just a messy night. It was. I say messy night, a very fun night rather, because we basically had a tab for the night. I can't remember how much it was exactly for, but because we had a tab where we could just get like any drinks we wanted. I remember when I was asking for them at the bar, and then eventually someone brought the drinks over, and I was like, for the one drink, I was like, this isn't what I ordered, so I was like, I'll have it anyway, and then it turns out it's actually one of my colleagues' drinks. So that's very silly of me, Ollie, and not to like jump to conclusions or anything like that. I distinctly remember being like, that's not my drink. I was like, I'll have it anyway, and then I was like, then the following drink that I got was like, I'll get another one of those. and that was fun. The main highlight of my time in November was going to California again, you know, very apropos with my LA themed t-shirt. I got to go back to California. I went to San Francisco to start off with, which again was really nice to be back there after so long. Even though my time there was brief, it was just, again, nice to explore around and get my bearings for everything. Also, I really enjoyed the trip to Yosemite National Park. Whilst the last time I was there, it was a very kind of like brief trip. It was nice to kind of like space things out that day and also get more chances to, you know, get out and explore, so that was really fun. And then of course the LA chapter of my trip itself, you know, getting to reunite with Steven, meet up with Brandon, and you know, we got to all sorts. What did we do now that I think about it? I know it's only over a month ago at this point, but what did we do when we were in LA? We did a lot of hiking. We did hikes up to Griffith Observatory and also a hike up Runyon Canyon. We went to go watch some basketball, watch the LA Clippers, and Brandon's actually mentioned that since we went to go watch that match at the Crypto.com arena, the Clippers have actually been doing pretty well, so big up the Clippers. And then me and Brandon went to Universal Studios, so it was very nice to just get about for that, and oh, it was nice. And I'd not been to a theme park in so long at that point, so it was nice to just get out and about, you know, go on some fun rides, explore Universal as a whole. And then on our penultimate day that we were there, we did what is probably one of my favourite things to do, and that is we watched the sunset at Santa Monica Pier. And it was just nice to just sit there and reflect about the trip and just, you know, it always brings back to like real positive vibes whenever I'm at that point in Los Angeles. So it was lovely. Very good stuff. And then of course we now come on to December, which I'll be honest, again, quite a quiet month in places, but I did get to reunite with Becca and Ethan in London again. This time we went to a Karen's Diner, which is just an amazing experience in itself. Like, we all know what Karen culture is like these days, so it's nice to kind of like do a Missy Elliott and flip reverse it, and where the staff there are just intentionally assholes to you, and you know, you've just got to put up with everything, and you know, we're all real good sportsmen and whatnot, but like just some things that were coming out from what they were telling, like, you know, customers there was absolutely, like, I think like a few years ago probably might not have been able to get away with it, but it was a fun little experience overall, and I really enjoyed that with the two. And again, hope to get to see more of you two next year. And then kind of ending off the year, I'm happy to say that, you know, going back to my job, so this time last year was actually when I started my new job, so I was in the training stage, and at this point I am, you know, permanently working from home and past my probation, and also been kept on full time. So that's all really good stuff, and you know, hopefully I get to do more with my job in the year to come. I don't know, I mean, as I mentioned, I'm probably going to be in the office every now and then in January, but then in turn, you know, I get to interact with, you know, some of the new starters as well. I've volunteered myself to do some like mentoring for what I do in my job, so it'll be nice to kind of like pass on my knowledge and skills to, you know, some of the new people starting there, so that they can then maybe in turn do the same, and it like repeats that cycle. But it's the way I think about it, it's nice to kind of like give back, you know, for what I went through when I was training earlier this year, and you know, nice to give back and, you know, pass that on again to some new colleagues, so that'll be good for next year. And yeah, that is very much 2023 in a nutshell for me. I will admit there have been, you know, a few ups and downs with this year, but for what it's worth, I really, you know, gone about enjoying this year, and I look forward to 2024 ahead, and even at this point I can talk about a few things that I've got planned in the next year. So in April I will be going on another trip to America, which is like crazy, because now that I think about it, I've never done a trip like to the States, like, you know, twice in the space of a few months. So I'm going to Philadelphia in April, and I'm going to be attending WrestleMania 40, and I'm buzzing for it. And it's crazy to think it's been nearly 5 years since I attended my first WrestleMania, when I attended WrestleMania 35, and it's like, yes! Ready to do it again. And also, again, as aforementioned, I really like doing it across 2 nights, so I'm going to be there both nights, and it's going to be absolutely incredible. And also in June, as it's become a bit of a tradition, me and my mum love going to concerts together. In June we are going to Manchester, and we're going to go watch The Killers, and I'm excited for that for a few reasons. One of the main reasons being that whenever I'm on on a night out, or if I'm ever on karaoke, I love just hearing Mr. Brightside, and especially with the latter, singing along to Mr. Brightside. It is just such a fun experience, and I look forward to singing my heart out to Mr. Brightside in particular, and of course a lot of their great songs that they've got, so bring it on. Bring on the Killers, bring on WrestleMania, and anything that 2024 might throw my way. But on that note, thank you very much for watching, guys. Again, I hope you all have a happy new year, and I hope 2024 brings a lot of fun, good stuff, and a lot of optimism your way. I don't know how I was trying to word that, but you know what I mean. But as always, I will leave you with some advice, and that is always to enjoy yourself, stay safe, and make the most of every opportunity that comes your way. Thank you for watching, and peace.